Hello, my name is Matthew, and I have a tag this morning. This is the problematic book tag, and it was kind of interesting. Yesterday morning, when I woke up and checked my phone, and I had a notification from YouTube stating that I was tagged in a video. I'd never seen that before. Um, I don't know if it's a new feature or what, but uh, I was tagged by KDBooks, and I just recently found I found his channel because he tagged me, um, and he's just a very thoughtful, well-spoken young man. I've watched a few of his videos, really great. I'll leave a link to um, his channel or video, and the original tag was by HyeJin Starlight, and I still need to check out that channel, but I'll leave a link to that as well. And all of the questions uh, kind of circle around problematic authors, which is a relatively recent term for me. I've only even heard about this in the past year, couple years or something. So we're kind of dealing with transphobic, homophobic, racist writers, and um, how we reconcile that with the work. And I think this is going to be a short video. Most of my answers are kind of all the same, but I was tagged, and it is certainly thought-provoking. So I'll just go through the questions, and I'm not sure what I'm going to say, so we'll find out. Um, are there problematic authors, transphobic, homophobic, racist, etc., that had a huge influence on your life? And how do you deal with knowing this in retrospect? So the first thing that um, I need to at least clarify for my own mind is the idea of a book or an author having a huge influence on my life. When I first started reading, and I started reading later than most people. I was already a late teenager or my early 20s before I started reading books for pleasure. And after I started getting a few books under my belt and finding how certain authors that I really enjoyed, I started getting this notion of finding some lightning rod of a book, some book that I was going to identify with, and it was going to be this life-changing book that was going to give me guidance, and I was going to be returning to it. And there was a very short period where I was on the hunt for this magical book. And what I've come to realize is there's no one book. It's whatever effect reading has on our lives, it's a cumulative effect. It's just the water rising all at once. There's no one book or author or perspective that I'm going to align my worldview and values with. And it's almost the opposite of what literature is supposed to do. It's a way of expanding the world that we live in, and not just finding that one thing. And most of my sense of morality does not come from any book that I've read. It comes from my parents, my upbringing, my other family members, my neighbors, schoolmates, friends, long-term friends, short-term friends, other relationships, things that are in my active life have shaped my behavior and how I see the world. I don't know why I was thinking about this, but years ago, I was a young lad, and my parents live on a little suburban street, and my dad has a snowblower. It's this giant contraption that you can push like a lawnmower, but you push it on the sidewalk or driveway, and it clears a snow path. It gets all the snow out of the way. It's got these big wheels, and it blows it out the side. And each year, we get regular snowfall each year. Uh, if there's a blizzard, or anytime my dad gets to go out with his snowblower, he uh, snow blows the driveway and the sidewalk. He also does the entire street, both sides, an entire suburban street. He goes all the way up to the stop sign on the one end, all the way on the stop sign on the other end, and he does it on the other side of the street. I don't even know why he does this, but I guess he enjoys it. And so he does this for years. And one day, there's a neighbor across the street, a couple houses over, that moves out, and a new family moves in. And before my dad even met him, he didn't like him. I think it's because he liked the people that lived there before, but I remember my dad looking out the window, it's middle of summer, and there's this family bringing boxes into the house. They're moving in, and my dad makes a comment, and he goes, "Well, I won't be snow blowing their sidewalk." And I go, "What are you talking about? You're gonna skip this one house?" My dad goes, "Yep." So that winter, there's a blizzard, and my dad goes out with his snowblower to snowblow the entire street. And he snowblows their house. He snowblows their section of the sidewalk. So he, in fact, did not skip over them. My dad comes back into the house. He looks like Frosty the Snowman, just completely covered and powdered in snow. And at some point, I say, "Well, I saw that you did their sidewalk. What happened there?" And my dad goes, "Well, what are you going to do?" That night, all the snow has been blown. My dad's showered and changed. He's in for the night. And there's a knock at the door. It's the family that had moved in. There hadn't been, they hadn't really met or interacted before this point, but they noticed that my dad had did their sidewalk. So there's a knock at the door. It's the entire family outside of the door. And they come in to say thank you. And they sit down. All of the children have bowls of food, these Tupperware containers full of food, to offer as a way of saying thank you for doing our sidewalk. And they sit down, everybody carries on, it's very pleasant, and they leave. And my dad makes a remark. They have this big bowl of chicken. They had all these dishes, but I remember the chicken. And my dad goes, "Well, I'm not eating that." Yeah. So, it's the end of the night. I'm kind of straggling around, and I make my way into the kitchen, and there's my dad with the bowl on the table, the whole bowl of chicken, and he's got his head in the bowl, just scarfing down. And he looks up, and he goes, "It's delicious." Loved it. There's more instruction and morality to be learned in that story, just personally for me, than all the books that I've read. Don't be a jerk. Try stuff. What was the question? Are there problematic authors, transphobic, homophobic, racist, that had a huge influence on your life, and how do you deal with knowing this in retrospect? An author that I've mentioned before, it's Celine pulled out this one book, and One of my favorite books, Journey into the End of the Night, is great. Death on the Installment Plan is my favorite book by him by far. Incredibly dark, hilarious, just nightmarish and uncomfortable in so many great ways. And come to find out that he's a Nazi sympathizer. Anti-Semitism is not on this list anywhere, but I imagine that it counts. And how do I reconcile it? I think to myself, this book is great. I love it. I don't care one whit about anything else. It does help that most of the authors that I read are long dead, so there is that. Question number 2. Are there authors on your TBR, bookshelf, etc., who you know are problematic, transphobic, racist, or homophobic, and how do you reconcile this? Well, there certainly are. Yes. By these standards, the personal lives of the authors through the centuries that line my bookshelves have their fair share of problems and shortcomings and short-sightedness, and also being aligned with the values of their own age and things like that. And for one, I don't I don't sit down to read a book to determine whether or not I agree or disagree with the work itself, and the personal life of the author really doesn't even register as I'm reading. What determines what's on my bookshelves is whether or not it's a fantastic piece of literature. The world contained within those pages, instead of anything else. Do you do specific research or check the background of authors you read or recommend, or even just mention regarding their politics? And this question really exemplifies that the tag is more, as I read it, the tag is more directed towards contemporary, modern, living writers that are publishing things today. They're on social media, they're on Twitter and television shows and radio shows and podcasts. They're a part of the living literature of the day. And that counts for such a small portion of my reading. The majority of the books that I'm reading are 50 years, 100 years, hundreds of years old, from all over the world, mostly Western, but all over the world. And what brings me to a book, and my concern is the subject matter of the book itself. If I think about writers that like what were the politics of Voltaire, or Henri de Balzac, or Kafka, or W.B. Yeats, or Coleridge, it's not something that has any bearing or determination on the book I'm going to read. And if there's a new if there's a new book, and the first thing I know about the author is their political beliefs, before I know anything about the book, I'm already put off, whether or not I disagree with their political stances on whatever. What does ethical consumption mean to you? I've never heard that term. It doesn't mean anything to me. Um, ethical consumption. If it means reading books from other cultures and lands and times, then I absolutely um, love it. It's one of my favorite things to be transported into a world I'll never know. I don't know if this has um, if the phrase is supposed to have a negative connotation or not. I just don't know. How many transgender and non-binary authors have you read? I I have no idea. I wouldn't. Again, most of the books that I'm reading um, are older, and um, I don't read too many biographies, and there's no way that I would know or care if um, if William Wordsworth would thought of, thought of himself as bisexual or something. It just I could just like look Dumas, Mark Twain, Sir Walter Scott, Victor Hugo, Thomas Jefferson, uh, David Sedaris. He's gay. I don't know if that counts. Um, yeah, I mean, it just I have no idea. I don't know. Is there a transgender and or non-binary author that you really enjoyed and would like to mention, or is there one on your TBR? Um, Again, it's not something that um, I look into or really am aware of. Um, and I think about this is kind of specific labels, but just being gay. Um, I remember reading In Search of Lost Time or Remembrance of Things Past by Marcel Proust, and I just love it. It's an ocean of a book that totally enraptures you. You just get lost in this sea of beautiful, gorgeous, sprawling language and sentences. And if I made an hour-long video about all of the reasons why I love the book and the writings of Marcel Proust, um, the fact that he may or may not have been gay might not even come up. It probably would because it does play a role in the novel, but um, it's um, certainly not one of the. It's not one of the first things that I think about when I um, read In Search of Lost Time or in any of the books or recommend him. Same thing with Truman Capote or Oscar Wilde, uh, Walt Whitman or Herman Melville. These, the undercurrent of their personal lives doesn't change my view or how I would recommend Moby Dick or The Death in Venice or A Picture of Dorian Gray or any of the short stories by Capote. How diverse is your bookshelf? And if you don't have a lot of books, your overall reading habits. And it it really would depend on um, who's asking. Um, a real jerk could come over to my house and look at my shelves and say, "Well, they're all old white men." If that ever happened, I would throw them out of the house immediately. Um, to me, it's so short sighted and bizarrely small, especially if it's coming from um, a reader, someone that really does enjoy reading. I think all of the ancient Greeks and Italians and the French books and Spanish, German, Russian, English, Scottish. Uh, there's some Eastern books as well, but that does take a majority of them. Um, they're all incredibly different uh, people and cultures, and books that sprawl through the entire literary history of the world. I don't want to make my library sound too magnificent, but uh, in that way, it's incredibly diverse. There's so many brilliant minds lining these shelves. Um, not many black people, but um, it's really not a consideration that I have. I'm always looking for new books to read. At the moment, I'm interested in reading more Latin American authors. So I have a list that I'm going to be going through, but 100 Years of Solitude, and I'm hoping that it's going to open up a lot of great reading for me. Um, let's see, I don't know what kind of answer that was. Um, do you specifically aim to read my more diverse authors, especially trans or non-binary? Um, I do try to keep a good balance of reading um, books written by men and women. Uh, Again, unless I'm sort of notified in advance somehow, uh, I don't know somebody's orientation. Boost some trans and non-binary and or queer booktubers or other diverse small booktubers. Um, I'm not going to tag anybody. If somebody's interested in doing this, you're more than welcome to. Um, I can think of one person that may or may not be trans or non-binary as a booktuber, but I don't know if they've ever even mentioned it, and it's not my place to make an assumption. So I don't really feel comfortable um, doing that, but I think it's an interesting set of questions. Um, it says, tag some people, especially cis allies. I believe cis means that you're the gender that you were born, your gender associations line up. Um, I don't know. So this is the problematic book tag, uh, and I guess I said this was going to be short. It was not short. Um, Leave a comment if you would like. Let me know if I gave any problematic answers. And thank you again to KDBooks for tagging me. And that's it. Thank you and take care. Bye.